Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce, Clear Creek ISD Board of Trustees Candidate Forum. My name is Glenn Friedman. I'll be serving as your host and moderator this evening. The mission of the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce is to be champions for business success and the quality of life in our community. And one way that the Chamber fulfills this mission is by supporting public education in the Clear Creek Independent School District. A successful school district is vital to the quality of life in a community like ours, and it also supports the economic development by ensuring a high-quality educated workforce. Hosting the Candidates Forum every year serves to inform the business community and area residents about the people who wish to lead our outstanding school district. Tonight's forum is being broadcast on clearlakearea.com and I-45 Now. I'd like to thank TJ Alds and his team at I-45 Now for their expertise and for their community support. And before we get started on the forum, I'd like to introduce a few folks. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Mo2 Stops and Atul Jain, I-45 Now, TJ Alds, and the City of Nassau Bay. Also here with us tonight is the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, Rebecca Lilly, the Chamber President and CEO, Cindy DeWeese, Chamber Vice President, Sherry Sweeney, the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, members of the Clear Creek Independent School District Board of Trustees and former trustees. And now I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our candidates this year. This year's candidates are seeking to represent District 4 on the CCISD Board of Trustees. May I introduce to you Jeff Larson, who is the incumbent, and Albert Whitliff. Thank you both for being here this evening. Thank you for your community spirit and community mindedness. Each year, the Chamber of Commerce provides a fair and impartial forum for the voters of the district. We have 4 goals for this forum. First, to introduce the candidates to you, the community. Second, to provide an open forum for voter information about the candidates. Third, to allow the candidates to demonstrate their knowledge about public education and about their role on the school board. And fourth, last but not least, to learn their views on the issues that affect the district, our community, and most importantly, our children. The questions that I'll be asking tonight have been developed and reviewed by the Chamber's Candidate Forum Committee. The questions have been framed to elicit responses reflecting how our candidates would act as a board member or about issues that the board members would be expected to know about. Candidates have seen the script for this evening's proceedings, but they haven't seen the questions that I'll be asking. For background information about each of the candidates, they've completed forms, and I would encourage you to read about each candidate at www.ccisd.net/elections. Now, I'd like to take a second and tell you about the format, and we'll get right to the questions. First, we'll have opening comments from each of the candidates. That will last for about 1.5 minutes each. Then we'll talk about board basics. That section relates to areas in which the board is responsible. Each candidate will be asked the same question, and those will be 1-minute time limits. Then we'll have some fun. We'll have a rapid fire where the candidates pick their opponent's questions. Each candidate will pick a number between 1 and 20, and their opponent will answer that particular question. Then we'll do putting you on the spot, in which questions relate specifically to each candidate's readiness to serve the community as an elected school board member. And then we'll move to categories. We'll have 7 categories representing different areas of a board member's responsibilities: policy, budget, superintendent evaluation, public education advocacy, student well-being, community engagement, and teacher recruitment and retention. And we'll have 5 rounds of questions there. Next, we'll go to having some questions that parents have sent in. And then last but not least, the closing comments from each of the candidates. Chamber staff will be timekeepers, and they'll wave flags to assist the candidates. A green flag means 30 seconds left. Yellow flag means 10 seconds left. Red flag means time has expired, and if it does, we hear the bell. With respect to the candidates and to avoid interruptions, we'd appreciate all of you here in the audience this evening to turn off your cell phones, refrain from recording the forum, from taking pictures, or otherwise distracting the nominees. Sorry, we can't take questions from the audience or comments from the audience at this time, but we do encourage everyone here this evening to ask your question to our candidates after the forum is over. They have materials and tables set up in the rear for your convenience. With that, it's time to get started with the forum. We begin with the opening comments. You'll each have a minute and a half to make your introductory comments, and Mr. Larson, we will start with you, please.
Well, first of all, I think I need to hit my mic. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who came out tonight for giving up part of your evening. I'd like to thank the Chamber and the City of Nassau Bay for having us out here, for I-45 Now for covering this. We appreciate, and I certainly would like to thank everybody who's following us through electronic media as well. It's an important community event, and I hope you learn a lot about what's going on in our schools and what I and my opponent think about things and how we face the issues. As for myself, my name is Jeff Larson. I'm the incumbent. I'm a relative newcomer to the area. I have only lived in District 4 for 38 years and 9 months, so I'm still getting the hang of it. I was privileged to work at the Johnson Space Center. I was a flight controller in mission control for 25 years, supported space shuttle missions and space station increments, and I'm privileged to have a daughter who started her CCISD career at PH Green Elementary, went to the WAVE program at Westbrook, and finished her education at Clear Horizons Early College High School with a high school diploma and a associate's degree in computer science. So I'm looking forward to sharing my opinions with you tonight, and I hope the questions are illuminating, and if I know I'm our moderator, they will be.
Mr. Whitliff, your opening comments, please.
Thank you, and I'd like to echo Jeff's comments on thanking everybody involved with this and participating. It's important to know that people care about these issues and they want to be a part of it, and it's important that people are helping to support it so that we can get into it. My name's Albert Whitliff, and I'm running for CCISD Board of Trustees. I'm originally from Lufkin, Texas. Went off to college in Washington, D.C. at the George Washington University, stayed up there and got involved in the national security community. I pursued my master's degree at George Mason in conflict analysis and resolution. Through that, I ended up working at the Pentagon with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I was there on 9/11, and that event prompted me to become a federal agent. I spent the next 22 years in service as a DSS agent and then a Homeland Security agent, ultimately ending up back in Texas, here in Houston, which is home, and it was the right place to be. In that career, I learned a lot about communicating, managing. I learned a lot about crisis and how to deal with problems. We decided to move down here to Clear Lake about 3.5 years ago. We knew we wanted to be here because my best friends are down here, close friends. My goddaughters, godchildren have all graduated from schools here or are starting in schools here. So this has been our home, although remotely, for quite some time. I'm glad to be here, and I'd like to continue my service, and that's why I'm running for office. I appreciate everyone taking the time, and I look forward to talking about the issues and seeing what we can get into this evening. Thank you.
Thank you both. We're going to go right into board basics, a section that deals with areas that the board's responsible for considering. You both will be asked the same questions. We'll be starting with you, Mr. Whitliff, and alternating from there. And there'll be 3 rounds in this section. The first question, starting again with you, Mr. Whitliff, is Clear Creek ISD is facing some serious financial issues in the coming years. Pretend you are the district's financial consultant. What would you advise and why?
So I think it's important to focus on a few things. Number one is whatever resources are available, making certain that we can gather those resources, making certain that we get that money into the school district, then making good decisions about how we're going to use that money and particularly keeping it in the district. We want to make certain those funds are available for all of the great programs that we've got. And if it does come time to have to make decisions, that we make them very judiciously and very carefully in full collaboration with the board, with our teachers, and obviously with the parents and families here in the community. We want to make certain that the funds are here and are being applied as best we can to keep what is, quite frankly, a great school district already on that right path, and the opportunity to continue to pursue that success.
Thank you very much. Mr. Larson, same question.
Two things we can do is focus on enrollment and attendance because our finances are directly tied to those two things. They're already a priority for our superintendent, and we're working hard on both those things. We also we're ahead of the curve, fortunately. We took a hard look at this about a year ago. We had a budget committee that I was privileged to serve on with two of the other board members and about 30 members of the community. And we came up with a number of means to enhance our revenue and cut our costs. So we've got a nice prioritized list of things to do, and we should just press right down that list as the crunch develops. And of course, the legislature could help us out too. I'd really like a little hand there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Larson, we'll be starting with you for this next question. The school board is responsible for calling bond votes. Given that not all of the identified capital needs were included in the last bond, would you favor calling for a bond vote in the next couple of years to address those additional critical needs? Why or why not?
Needs are what you define. We had a committee of about 80 community members who met and considered our needs and identified 3 different levels of support. Ultimately, what we went with was what the voters would stand behind. So if you're looking at the next 2 years, that's going to be a matter of taking a good hard look, especially at a couple of schools that are aging, and looking at the revenues we have and whether or not we can get what we need done there in the next 2 years. It's also, we have to also consider what the taxpayers would support. So I couldn't give you a hard answer for the next 2 years, but most likely we will have to take a good hard look at that in that time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Whitliff, same question.
So I think it's an important notion to look at how the funding is working. I think it's right that we want to make certain that we're applying it as best we can. But the fact is there are going to be shortfalls. And one of the things that I like about bonds is that it's a way to identify what are the priorities that we need the money for in a timely fashion. We want to know what it is that we're spending it on, and then we want to be able to present that to the voters. Nobody wants to pay more taxes. I appreciate that. But this is a good way to say these are the priorities or the necessities, which is what we're really talking about with something like this. And then you can put that information out there, and then you can get the approval from the community. And I think that buy-in from the community is what's so important when we try and acquire more money to fill these gaps and make certain that these needs are being met, because it's so important for the students.
Thank you very much. Now the third question, Mr. Whitliff, we'll start with you on this one. One responsibility of the school board is strategic planning. CCISD is engaged in that process right now and is already committed to Vision 2030. What's your assessment of Vision 2030? How does it fit into where this district is going based on their strategic planning?
Obviously, this was a decision that was weighed out carefully as plans were being made to move forward. I think the key is that as much as the vision can be maintained and that commitment is there, you want to follow that path to adjust when you need to, but not get into a position where you're going completely off track, because that time frame is really not that far out when you start looking at what are we going to be doing in the near future. Strategic planning is one of those processes where you always have to look at what steps can we adjust and what things can we not get away from. And I think that one of the things we're looking at there is keeping things as modern and moving forward as we can in an ever-changing public school environment.
Thank you. Mr. Larson.
Sure. Vision 2030 is sort of battle tested. When we created Vision 2030, one thing we did was we went out to industry leaders because we wanted to make sure our graduates would be successful and would have the skills that they needed when we started looking for success later in life. And we got a list of what qualities in our students that leaders in business and elsewhere were looking for. And Vision 30 is built around that. So we've already baked in where do our kids need to go, and we've already considered that. And as we proceed with the strategic planning process, Vision 2030 is our guide to make sure that our strategy is aligned with the goals identified in it.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next section now, which is the rapid fire, in which candidates will pick a number between 1 and 20, and the person's opponent will respond to whatever that number was. These are very quick, 30-second responses. So we'll start with Mr. Whitliff picking and Mr. Larson responding. Please pick a number between 1 and 20, please. Oh, and for those of you watching at home and here, you'll notice this clever chart that Sloan has put together, so you will be able to see the questions as well. Mr. Whitliff, what's your number?
Let's go with 7.
Number 7. Describe the role of a board member in improving student academic achievement in District 4.
Well, it's the same in any district. It's primarily it is focusing on policy and following the data and working with the superintendent to make sure that policy goals related to student achievement are followed through on.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Larson, the pleasure of picking a number is all yours.
Number 1.
Number 1. Mr. Whitliff, do you think private schools should receive public tax dollars?
No, I don't. I don't think that's a good use of money that's already in a limited school system. I think it's important that that money stays within the school. I think there's a few fallouts that you come from that. One thing is you take those resources away, you give it to somebody else and say, now we're going to compete, but then you're not necessarily able to hold them to the same rules. And I think that's problematic with already limited resources. I also think that there could be dangers here of taxes having to come up because if those monies being pulled out, it's got to come from someplace else. So overall, I'm not in favor of that.
Well, your reward is to pick a number for Mr. Larson's response. Which
Let's
number?
do 14.
Number 14. Mr. Larson, suppose the district staff and a community committee unanimously recommend that the board adopt a history curriculum that you find unacceptable. How do you approach a situation like this?
Well, this starts with making this known to the superintendent and asking questions about what is the goal here with this curriculum, pointing out where it might not fit into what we're trying to do. We're responsible for teaching to the TEKS, the Texas skills and knowledge, and our curriculum must conform to that.
Thank you. And the first instance of the bell. Thank you. Mr. Larson, pick a number, please.
Number 2.
Number 2. We hear a lot about the rise of chronic student absenteeism across the nation. First, what's chronic absenteeism? Is it an issue here? And if it is, what can boards do to get kids back to school?
Well, I think when you talk about chronic anything, it's recurring, it's consistent, and it's becoming a problem. So that's how you define that. I think that coming out of COVID has still been interesting, and I realized it some years ago, but that's still feeding into why you might be seeing that. I don't actually know if it's an issue here, and I'll be honest about that. What I think boards can do to try and get kids back is keep all the good programs that draw them in, the arts, music, sports, the things they might be in favor of, to bring them back into school, and then they can focus.
Thank you. And could you pick a number, please?
17, please.
17. Mr. Larson, one of the year's biggest topics has been the use of artificial intelligence tools in the schools. What is the issue, and how might CCISD address artificial intelligence from a policy standpoint?
Well, I've heard several things about this, and what I usually hear is people concerned that students will use artificial intelligence to cheat. We're very much aware of that, and we do help our teachers we give them training to help them recognize that. But more importantly, I think, is our use of artificial intelligence as a teacher aid. And that's something we've been very aggressive about, and it really helps in the classroom.
Thank you. Could you pick a number, please?
Number 3.
Oh, there's a pattern forming here, Mr. Larson.
Yeah.
Mr. Whitliff, in your opinion, are CCISD schools safe and secure? If so, what's the key to keeping them safe? And if not, what needs to be done?
Overall, yeah, I do think that CCISD schools are safe and secure, but they're open environments, and that's always a challenge. I think it's important to keep them open and welcoming. The things that can be done to help keep them safe are going to be primarily looking at policies and procedures that you have for access, seeing to it that access control is carefully monitored, and then making certain that people are paying attention to the students and seeing if they've got any issues or any duress that's going on. I also think that school resource officers are a great idea to have. And that'll be that.
Thank you. Could you pick a number, please?
Sure, let's do 4.
Number 4. And the fun begins. Mr. Larson, some people believe that public school districts should be run like a business. Do you? Why or why not?
Well, there's certainly elements of it that absolutely are a business and have to be run that way. And there's another component, though, because we are a people business, and it's very crucial that we meet the needs of the people that we serve. So in that respect, it's a little different from a company that's just selling widgets.
Thank you. Now, could you pick another number, please?
Number 5.
Woo. And the crowd goes wild. Number 5. 11 parents notify you that they object to a book in their children's school library. They demand that you have it removed immediately. What would you say to them?
The first thing I do is that I assure them that there's a process in place already to address this kind of thing. A committee that can work and evaluate that in conjunction with teachers and with parents, so those kinds of decisions can be made in a proper fashion and in a reasonable fashion. Let them know that there is a way to go about it, and let them know what they need to do to initiate the process. And then, of course, we would then let the system address it as best they can, understanding this is a complicated thing. I'm also a big fan of having professional librarians working in the libraries as advisors when it comes to this kind of thing.
Thank you very much. And this will be the last one. Could you pick a number, please?
Number 10.
Number 10. Over the past few years, the issue of teachers' mental and emotional wellness has become a topic for school boards. What should be done to support teacher wellness?
Everything we reasonably can. This ties into teacher retention, so certainly we should, to the extent possible, provide supports. And part of that is simply removing stress from their job wherever we can and not overburdening them with unnecessary work. So it's a combination of that and providing what supports you would find in an HR.
Thank you very much. It's time now to move on to the next category. I'm sorry. Oh, one more. I'm sorry. We have one more. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I make an obligatory error every single year. This was my first. More will likely come. Mr. Larson, could you pick a last number, please?
Number 6.
I'm shocked. Number 6. The Texas legislature allows school districts to arm teachers through various
CCISD employees as a whole. I think if you have school resource officers, there's trained law enforcement officers that are going to be on campuses, those are the right people to have that are armed. The process of carrying a gun in that kind of a situation is very complicated, and I know from a long career. Multiple guns in the place makes armed encounters always happening, mistakes could happen, and more bullets are flying, and I don't think that's a good idea. Only professionals.
Thank you. Move on to the next category now, which is putting you on the spot. You'll each have a question that relates specifically to your readiness to serve the community as an elected school board member. There'll be two questions, one for each of you, and there'll be a minute to respond. Mr. Larson, we'll start with you. How has being a school board member changed you, and what have you learned in your 3 years on the board?
You know, something that has really profoundly affected me is, for many years, I worked in the NAS community, and there's a culture there, and it's a very hard charging, very go, 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 can do kind of attitude. Moving to the second highest scoring employer on the Forbes list in the Clear Lake area has been a sea change. The amount of support for each and every individual is profound, and it's something I did not experience at NASA. And that has made me look at how we relate to each other, what our goals really are, and has helped me focus on what I think really matters most, and that's the outcome for our students.
Thank you very much. Mr. Whitliff, question for you, sir. It's been over 4 years since the onset of the pandemic. Is learning loss a real issue? And if so, what's the board's role in addressing learning loss? And if it isn't, are there other pandemic issues that CCISD should address?
So I think learning loss is still going to be an issue because there were students that faced that challenge that are still part of the CCISD programs and schools. So we're going to have to deal with helping them to catch up and also try and reattract some people who maybe didn't come back. So I think that's going to be an important part of what we're going to do there. I think the board's role in that is going to be trying to get the outreach and the word out that we're back on our feet, we're up and running, and see to it that they know the resources are available to get kids back involved and maybe even bring new ones in. I also think that one of the issues that needs to be addressed is that we're going to have clear guidance on, in the event that we face something similar to this again, we're going to have certain policies and answers on how we're going to deal with it so that people kind of know. Obviously, the last time was all very new. We've learned a lot from it. And I think we can go forward knowing that if we ever have to deal with something like this again, we can have better policies in place that reassure people and address any of their concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, next question is for you, sir. During your time as a board member, what have you accomplished? What initiatives have you led? And how is CCISD better thanks to you?
Well, I really have to go back to that budget committee because that was crucial. We would be in a very, very different place if that work had not happened. I also believe that I was instrumental in bringing the financial needs to the community so that the taxpayers and parents and everybody else could look at where we were with that. And because of that, I think we passed a different set of initiatives than we originally started with. And I think we have saved millions of dollars that we're finding that we really need because of that. I think that, and I mean, we're talking around in the neighborhood of $90 million. So I think that's a significant accomplishment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Whitliff, a question for you, sir. What experiences with CCISD specifically have you had? What knowledge of the district do you possess that would lead a voter to conclude they should vote for you to represent them?
Well, on a very personal note, my best friend's kids all graduated from CCISD's program, and I've come through and been part of their lives the whole time. I've been to numerous CCISD graduations because I've been a part of all of that. My two other goddaughters are already in the school, so on a very personal note, I've been connected with that. On a professional note, one time we had a situation, I can't elaborate too much, but there was a threat at a school that elevated to the point that the Joint Terrorism Task Force got involved. When I found out where it was and what was going on, I volunteered to come down and take the lead on it. What I found was an amazingly engaged staff, people that cared a lot about their students. They were forthcoming while they protected their students. And that tells me that there's a culture down here where the kids come first. And that really impressed me a great deal. I want to see that that continues to be the case and that we continue to have those kinds of collaborations. And to me, that just showed the level of professionalism the staff has here. And I'd like to continue to help them do that.
Thank you both. We're going to move on to the next category, which is taking a look at areas that the board is responsible for, including policy, budget, superintendent evaluation, public education advocacy, student well-being, community engagement, and teacher recruitment and retention. These will be 1-minute responses. I would like each of you in your turn to pick a category, and I will ask you a question from that category. Only one category for each of you. And we'll be starting with you, Mr. Larson. And, oh, good. All the categories are up on the screen. Pick a category. I'll ask you a question.
Let's go with policy.
Okay. First policy question. You receive a threatening email demanding that the district stop teaching critical race theory or else. What is your response to that policy issue?
Well, I would say our policy has been for years that we will not teach critical race theory. And that was the case even before the legislature passed that into law. We have had a policy that says we cannot racially scapegoat. And so I would certainly want to know how we were teaching critical race theory to ensure that we were following our own policy.
Thank you. Mr. Whitliff, which category would you like?
Let's do budget.
Okay, first question on the budget. Perhaps the biggest budgetary question facing CCISD results from the facts that the basic allotment is currently capped, and the Vader, which has plugged a current budget hole, is not a long-term fix. Given this situation, what can CCISD do to provide salary increases or do other worthwhile things?
Anytime you're dealing with a cap on something like this, the first thing you want to do is make certain that you're maximizing the money that you've got coming in, and you see to it that you take every action you can to keep those funds in the school district. You also want to start looking at, since it's not a long-term fix, what's going to be the next fix that you want to do. You're going to have to start looking at, is there big policy? Is there legislation that you need to go address and try and make certain that it's coming in? And I think that's going to be a big piece when you look at salary increases, obviously. It's going to have to come at the legislative level. And so the board needs to make certain that it's engaged on trying to address that as best it can. I also think making certain the budgets are maintained as best they can to where resources are available to teachers, to where they're not coming out of pocket for anything that they're having to pay for. That gives them a de facto raise by keeping their money in their pockets and not being something they're having to provide back to the school board.
Thank you very much. Mr. Larson, category, please.
Superintendent evaluation.
All righty. Here's the question. What are the three most important attributes that you look for in a superintendent?
I look for leadership, authenticity, and I look for diligence. And I think those three things describe our current superintendent very, very well.
Thank you. Mr. Whitliff, a category, please.
Let's jump around a little bit and go to student well-being.
Okay. Teachers report that student well-being, mental health, discipline, and attitudes are worse since the pandemic started over 4 years ago. Should the board address these types of issues? Why or why not?
I think the board has to address these kind of issues because it's part of that overall policy of how we're going to deal with the school environment in general. I think the ways to think about doing it are going to involve a lot of training for the teachers to help them identify when there's perhaps a mental health issue, help them have different tools to deal with discipline and attitude problems. Things like active listening are going to be very important. Ways to understand really what they're dealing with. If they can get at the foundational challenges they're dealing with a student, then they can start figuring out better ways to try and help with what's going on. I think that's another big piece of this. We've got to understand that in a lot of cases when it comes to this, these are kids that are in distress and they need our help. And if we can help them, we can calm a lot of this down and do better for them and make life better for the teachers as well.
Thank you very much. Mr. Larson, your third one, please.
Community engagement.
Okay. Education foundations raise funds to support the school district. Why do districts need that extra money, and what should those funds be used for?
I'm glad you asked. CCEF is something that is very near and dear to my heart. What they are, and I mentioned this, they are our engine of innovation. They allow teachers and students to do things and to try things that we might not otherwise have the money to throw at. It allows us to try things out, learn what works and what doesn't, and really guide the district for programs to adopt and expand whenever they're successful.
Thank you. Mr. Whitliff, category, please.
Let's do teacher recruitment and retention.
All right. What percentage of the teacher workforce do you see leaving the district annually? Why are they leaving? And is there anything that can be done to keep good teachers in our schools?
So I don't have a particular percentage for you, but I do know that that's always a challenge. And I know that large parts of why they're leaving are the expected ones. Their pay is not good enough. They don't know that they're necessarily getting the support that they need. I think the ways that we can improve that are going to be to try and provide them with that support and then work towards getting them the pay that is commensurate with all that they accomplish and provide. I think identifying how important they are to the community and treating them as such is going to be a big part of how we keep them. Another thing that I think is incredibly valuable is to expand the training that's available to them so that they become better teachers and they have more opportunity because of that. And it gives them a kick up in their professionalism. And I think that's important to show them the respect they deserve.
Thank you very much. Mr. Larson, category, please.
Let's come back to policy again.
Okay. Oh, did you answer the policy question before?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you get one crack at each one of the categories. So if you pick another one, please.
I guess budget.
All right. Imagine that one of your board colleagues suggests that to save money, CCISD eliminate either the fine arts or the Leader in Me program. What's your response and why?
Well, I mean, that's kind of like asking me which of my children I'd like to give up.
Okay, which of your children?
Neither one. This comes down to how much money do we have and what can we support. Fine arts is really, I don't see these two programs as comparable in budget scale. And so I would probably look for ways to economize with Leader in Me because we simply cannot give up fine arts as part of the curriculum.
Thank you. Mr. Whitliff, a category from you, sir.
I'll do superintendent evaluation.
Okay. The board is responsible for evaluating the superintendent's performance against the goals that the board and the superintendent have agreed upon. In addition to the district's overall academic performance, what other metrics or measurements do you think are important to address?
Well, I think obviously how budget is being handled and how resources are being distributed is going to be something that has to be taken into account. While I know the board has a significant role in that, obviously executing that is a big piece that the superintendent is responsible for. I also think that one of the other things that you want to look at is how well they're doing with their connectivity with the community, with the teachers, and with the students. Are they engaged? And are there ways to then measure that in a way that's useful and objective? To see their involvement, I think then starts to feed into a lot of the understanding of are the grades doing well, but also how well are they just managing the resources that they're responsible for? Because sometimes there are things that are within their grasp and others there aren't, but if they're working the right way and they're making progress, it's worth giving them the opportunity to make their case.
Thank you. And the last question in this section, Mr. Larson, your selection, please.
I don't think I answered a student well-being, did I?
No.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. Some people cite social media as one cause of many problems that students face, from cyberbullying to short attention spans. Should school boards ban cell phones and other access to social media? Why or why not?
Yeah, absolutely not. And the reason is this is treating students that are growing in a work environment, in a college environment, And we'd rather deal with that at our level in an appropriate fashion, demonstrate appropriate policies and appropriate behaviors, and train those behaviors into our students than just pretend that there isn't a problem at all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Whitliff, your last selection in this category, please.
Did I do community engagement already? Then I'll
No.
do that, please.
No. Community engagement. Well, first of all, define what you think community engagement means, and then tell us what you're involved in that benefits the school district.
So community engagement, as far as being on the board, is making certain that you are both accessible to your constituents, but also making the outreach to go and not just say, hey, I'm here, but to go out and find out what it is that they're thinking, what's going on. I think that can happen by going to school events, obviously, but I think there are a lot of other places that you can do that, chambers of commerce and things like that as well. I think that you want to be making certain that you've got your finger on the pulse of what's going on within the community writ large, as well as at the schools. I think that as far as what I'm currently involved with, I have in the past been involved with civic clubs, other organizations that do community outreach that are involved in that kind of thing. And at the moment, what I'm looking to do is get involved to benefit the school board and the district, and that's why I'm here this evening.
Thank you very much. And that concludes that section. And we are now into a set of questions that parents have asked. These are 1-minute questions. Both of you will answer the same question in this round. And Mr. Larson, we'll be starting with you, sir. And the first question is, what do you see as the most significant challenge CCISD will face in the next 3 years? And how should the board go about addressing it?
Most significant challenge is a decline in funding caused by a drop in enrollment, and I don't see us dropping in attendance because we've worked so hard to bring attendance back up, and our efforts are paying off. But I do see that the money problem and the enrollment problem being a big deal. How should we address it? We have been moving slowly towards a more and more open enrollment model. I think, as the legislature takes a hard look at school choice and whatever form that may take, I think it's inevitable that we learn how to compete for students. That when students come into the district, they bring funding with them. We have excess capacity, and so things like our current program for tuition-based pre-K can be part of that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Whitliff, the same question. What do you see as the most significant challenge in the coming years, and how would you address it?
I think there's no doubt the funding problem is going to be the most significant challenge that's going to be faced. I think that the way to go about that, to echo some of my opponent, is going to be how do we increase that enrollment? I think things like having CTE and other specialized programs that attract students because they see that they have a choice within the public school system is a valuable way to bring people in. I think the pre-K program is going to be an important way to do that as well. And I think anything else we can do to continue to consider the fact that there's only so much additional space that CCISD is going to grow. We're on a bit of an island already, and it's starting to be something where that's becoming more limited. So what we want to do then is adapt to that and see how we can do additional outreach and bring in the students, and making certain that a big piece of that is by making the program so good that this is a place that people want their students to be.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Whitliff, you'll be first to answer the next question. How will the passage of a voucher plan, an ESA by whatever name, affect the district? Not whether you're for it or against it, but how will it affect the district?
It'll take funds out of the school district where we need those funds already. In fact, that's a big part of what we've been talking about tonight. It'll take those funds out, provide them to other schools that are not beholden to the same rules as the public schools, and say, now you have to compete against that. That's like taking resources away from any team, giving them another team, and saying, but this team doesn't have to play by the same rules. It's a problem. I think it'll affect CCISD in a bad way if voucher plans go forward.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, same question.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that it will provide challenges. It's changing the playbook and forcing us to adapt and adopt. But the strength of CCISD is that we've always done that through the years. Our demographics are changing tremendously. And to go back to my previous answer, any sort of voucher plan will force us to compete for students. I think we're much better positioned than other districts to do that, but we need to change our mindset in order to do that. We need to look at how do we attract students and continue to attract students. And, maintaining our academic excellence would, I think, be a huge part of that.
Thank you very much. And you'll kick off the next question, sir. Traditionally, school board races have been local and nonpartisan. Recently, here in Texas, we've seen increasing partisanship and donations coming from out of district and out of state. How does this trend affect public education, and do you favor it?
Okay, well, I've been accused of being this. First of all, I want to say that everybody in this room has a political orientation, and everybody favors a party whether they think they do or not. If you're looking at specifically very much partisan organizations that wave a flag and say, here's where we stand, those are special interest groups. And I think it's up to each candidate to judge and to consider what those organizations stand for and to what extent they might be beholden to those kinds of organizations. So can that affect public education? It certainly gives some people a bigger voice than they otherwise had. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it depends on who's talking and how candidates respond to it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Whitlow, same question.
So I think in this case, when we're talking about the out-of-district and out-of-state funding, we're clearly talking about the special interest and things like that. I think if you've got a buddy someplace who's sending you $50, that's not what we're talking about. I think what it does do is it does start to affect public education because these are special interests that are trying to influence what's going on. And what that does is it takes it out of the hands of the local community, which is what it's supposed to be. This is supposed to be on that level. I agree that there is inherently partisanship, but I think by trying to keep these programs nonpartisan, it keeps us closer to the middle, which is more where we're going to make all of our moves forward because that's where compromise is going to be found. Pulling in this money and these out-of-state, out-of-district interests that are trying to manipulate it undermine that. And as they undermine that compromise, it's going to make it harder for things like school boards to accomplish their missions. So I don't favor it.
Thank you very much. And now the last question in this section, and we will start with you, Mr. Whitliff. CCISD was once considered a fast growth district and now has fewer students than it had just a few years ago. As funding is attached to enrollment, what programs, specific programs, would you suggest for CCISD?
Well, CCISD already has a lot of great programs, and I think it's important to keep the programs that need to be. That's a different question than what's on my screen, by the way. Sorry.
Slightly different, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, answer the question that's on your screen, because that's the one people can see at home.
Okay, so as funding is attached, what CCISD needs to do then is maintain these excellent programs that they have and a diversity of programs. It's important to keep the gifted and talented, the special education, the CTE programs. Those pieces are needed to provide that choice within the system, and that'll also help keep more students coming in and keep the level to where it is, which is top quality, so that we can continue to attract students and retain those students here. Also, as we evaluate programs, we want to be very clear about what we're looking at and what we're talking about. And in the event that we do need to adjust that, we want to make certain it's done in a collaborative environment that best suits our students and our community.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, your response, please.
Well, I think we're doing exactly what we need to do. Personally, I wish we might move a little more aggressively in that direction, and that's opening up enrollment to students outside the district. They bring the funding with them. We can't. The demographics are pretty much set in stone. We are going to be losing students simply because our the homes that have new families have been replaced by empty nesters, and that's not going to change. And of course, if we're in a competitive environment, we have to provide a better product. We have to have better academics. We have to have a more varied program. And we already have the basis for all of that. We just need to keep what we have and expand on it where we can.
Thank you. Now it's time for our closing comments, and this will be in reverse order from the opening comments. You'll each have a minute and a half to make your closing comment to the community. Mr. Whitliff, please begin.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your engagement and your involvement. Thank you to the sponsors and the coordinators of this event. Thank you to my opponent for having a good conversations here. And thank you to our moderator for keeping things moving and on pace. Also, the flags and bell ringers, y'all kept us hopping. This is such an important topic, and I think that's why folks are engaged in it. When I decided to retire from federal service, I quickly found that I missed that opportunity to participate and be a part of helping out, being that servant role. And as I talked to people that I trusted, they kept encouraging me, this is such an important place. This is such a place that we need to be involved. The timing has worked out. I think I have something to offer, and I'd very much like to do that. I think it's important that we maximize the resources, that we keep them here, that we expand on these brilliant programs that we've got, and that we work out how to solve the challenges coming. When we moved down here to Clear Lake, one of the reasons we came down here was because my little one is 5 and is starting public school. He starts in the fall. This place is so good for it. I've also had the opportunity to see ISD the whole way through a process because my oldest one graduated last year. And I know how good it is down here from friends, people that I trust that are down here and have raised their kids in this place. I want to keep it as good as it is. And I think I've got some good ideas, some good energy, and I think I can help. And I'd appreciate it if you'd support me. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you very much. Mr. Larson, your closing comments, please, sir.
Well, I'd also like to also thank everybody who showed up tonight. And no matter what capacity you're in, from moderator to audience member and everybody else in between. It has truly been an honor and a privilege to serve this district. It's a wonderful district. I am struck, especially when I talk to people from other districts, how much here in CCISD we have what I call first world problems. I would much rather have our problems than the ones in most of our surrounding districts. It's just tremendous. I am terrified that that we can't rest on our laurels. I'm afraid that if we try to do that, we are going to backslide and lose what keeps us special here in CCISD. And so that's my focus, has been my focus, and will continue to be my focus on how this district should operate and how it should proceed. And that's to face the challenges of declining enrollment, face the budget challenges, and still provide outstanding service to the community. I think that's the most crucial thing. Where our students go 5, 10, 20 years from now is going to be more important than anything else that happens in this room.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, this concludes the formal part of the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum. Those of you who are here are welcome to stay. Candidates have materials available and would welcome your questions and your comments. I think you'll agree that this has been an outstanding display of commitment, motivation, dedication, and concern for our district, and more importantly, for our kids. We would like you to be an informed voter, though. The Clear Creek Independent School District's trustees will hold their regular election on Saturday, May 4th. Early voting will be from April 22nd to April 30th. Information's on the screen here, with polls closed on Sunday, the 28th. The early voting hours and the locations are up on the screen. Election day is May 4th, as I said. Polls are open from 7 to 7, and the polling places on Election Day are Clearbrook High School, Gym 3 Annex, and at Ward Elementary. On the ballot, and in this order, are Jeff Larson and Albert Whitliff. First of all, I personally would like to thank you for running for office, and all of us who have ever had the pleasure, the honor of serving this district appreciate your commitment to the community. Thank you both. Once again, I'd also like to thank our sponsors this evening, Motu Stops and Atul Jain, I-45 Good stuff.
Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.